Hello, and welcome to another episode of Flyer Sports here on Flyer TV. My name's Joe Sullivan.
I'm Sean Vitalis.
On this episode of Flyer Sports, we'll be discussing the stellar play of the number 18 ranked women's volleyball program, the solid play of the women's soccer team, who also remain undefeated in conference play.
The women's volleyball team has been on a tear, racking up 13 straight victories since their last defeat against the number 6 Louisville Cardinals. The Flyers in this stretch have dominated A10 competition, starting conference play with a perfect 7-0 record, winning all but one set, which they dropped to Loyola in their series sweep up in Chicago. Dayton sits atop the A10 with a one-game lead over VCU.
The Flyers are ranked 18th in the nation with a record of 18-2 on the year. They haven't dropped a set since their 3-1 victory over Loyola on September 22nd. In this perfect stretch, Dayton has swept Fordham, Duquesne, and George Mason. The dominant play has been inspired by the amazing work of the veterans, Lexi Almodovar, Amelia Moore, Elena Yates, and Alyssa Miller, as well as the coming of age of both Carissa Kaminsky and Taylor Russell.
Lexi Almodovar is leading the A10 in points and kills. This is familiar territory for Almodovar as she managed this feat in a remarkable 2022 campaign. Almodovar, with this season, is really cementing herself as one of the great Flyer outside hitters of all time. Taylor Russell has done a great job as that second option for the Flyers. She's currently in the top 5 of points and is leading the A10 with 35 aces.
Amelia Moore, in her final year of eligibility, is putting up another great season, leading the A10 in blocks, but most importantly, being the powerful leader of the squad. Great play from Elena Yates has also elevated the team's performance, as she is third in the A10 in hitting. Dayton is on the road this weekend as they try to continue the winning streak at Davidson.
The women's soccer team has had a solid start to conference play. They're currently unbeaten in the A10 with a record of 4 wins, 0 losses, and 3 draws. Dayton is 1 point behind from the defending champion St. Louis Billikens. The Flyers went on the road to SLU and got a well-earned 1-1 draw, as a 70th minute goal from Diana Benigno allowed the Flyers to hold on and split points with the Billikens.
After giving SLU their first non-win in A10 play, Dayton couldn't manage to score on the 2-1-3 Fordham Rams and settled for a scoreless draw at home. The Flyers are back to their winning ways as they picked up 2 straight victories on the road against George Washington and VCU.
Dayton has 3 games left in conference play as they attempt to get home field advantage for the playoffs. With games against George Mason, Loyola, and Rhode Island, the Flyers need to take care of business and hope for St. Louis and LaSalle to possibly drop points. Regardless, the team looks to play their best soccer down the stretch as the postseason is coming along.
Now for the Dayton women's volleyball team, they have been absolutely dominant as of late. This past weekend swept George Mason on Friday and Saturday, both of those 3-0 wins, improving to 7-0 in A10 play and 18-2 on the year. Sean, they have been nothing but great in A10 play, and as of the looks of it, it looks like they're not slowing down.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've seen their ranking jump a little bit week by week the past 4, maybe 5 weeks now. They've been inside of that top 25, and I think that's absolutely deserved. I mean, 2 losses on a season, and it's against 2 ranked teams at the time. We've seen Marquette drop from the rankings since then, but Louisville still a top 10 team sitting at the 6th spot right now. They were number 2 in the country when the Flyers dropped that match. It was a 5-setter. Both of those losses actually 5-set matches that are extremely close and really could have gone either way. So I think the Flyers really showing what they can do from season to season. I mean, last year was one that was just up and down. Some really, really solid wins and also some losses that you look back on and kind of say, you know, what happened on that weekend or on any given day. I feel like you didn't know what team you might get, but the consistency for the Flyers is just through the roof this year.
And I think a big part when looking at Dayton is you got to look at, you know, the RPI standings. And in the rankings last week, they were 20th in the regular poll, but for RPI, they were 18th. They bumped up this week, and you look at the resume, only 2 losses this year were against number 12 at the time, Marquette, and the number 2 team in the country, the Louisville Cardinals. As of now, I mean, obviously they're flawless in A10 play. Opening weekend beat Loyola Chicago out in Chicago against the Ramblers in both big wins, which they were the preseason favorite going into the A10. As far as ranking goes, it should be interesting to see how much higher Dayton can get with the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting game for the Flyers, and I think you can say this about really any Dayton athletics. It's really tough being in the A10 conference. There's been a huge call to move into the Big East, you know, over the past few years with the success of our programs getting into a bigger and maybe more competitive conference with more teams regularly in the rankings. Dayton doesn't play anybody really near the rankings, at least for this volleyball schedule. In soccer, St. Louis typically finds themselves in the top 25, and obviously in other sports, it's a little bit of a different game. But for volleyball, Dayton, at least this year, is the clear front runner. And I think, like you said, went to Loyola, headed north to Chicago and took care of business. That's their only set that they've dropped. As far as conference play goes, a perfect 7-0. Very reminiscent of that Loyola team that we saw a year ago. Came into the conference and just took care of business. There was no question that they were the favorites to win and took down the Flyers in the championship. And I think that it's going to be a really interesting look as we head into the postseason to see who the Flyers going to match up with and who's going to find themselves in that 2-3-4 spot that's really looking to pull an upset on the Flyers, as they are definitely the team to take down.
And as the women's volleyball team continues to roll, so will the women's soccer team. The women's soccer team winning 2 of their last 4 games, beating George Washington 4-1, and then that last game this past weekend, beating VCU 1-0. Really big wins coming off of sort of a week where obviously they played St. Louis, and St. Louis being the favorite after winning the A10 the past 5 years. And again, it feels like every year they're always in the top 25 conversation. And that was a big game as far as standings for the A10. Able to get out a draw out in St. Louis. Following that, had a tie against Fordham in a game that they really felt they should have won. We were both on the call for that one, and it was an interesting one, but able to bounce back with 2 wins of their own.
Yeah, that Fordham game, absolutely a brutal call. It was just tough. Flyers getting look after look. And I think that's something that we've seen from them all season. And I think that's something that we really hope to continue to see as we head towards the postseason. Like we said, 3 games left in conference play, and then those rankings will be finalized just 1 point behind the Billikens. Like you said, that tie, very, very big as far as just not letting them jump ahead. We're still in the conversation, and I think that's the big thing for the Flyers right now. Obviously, sitting at number 2 spot, they'd love to be number 1, and I think that possibly playing here at Beaujon for the playoffs could be big. The Red Scare always turns up, and I think especially if it was, for an A10 championship and a trip to the NCAA championship tourney, then I think the fans would love to see that here. Like you said, last 5 years, St. Louis has got it done, and I think that they're used to being played, in St. Louis. I think that it would be good, obviously, for the Flyers to be that 1 seed and hold that over them. It would be a very different position for the Flyers compared to the past 4 or 5 years.
And no losses in A10 play so far for Dayton, as they will be battling for a possible host here for the A10 tournament. Should be big. Obviously, St. Louis and Dayton really neck and neck. In a game like these next few for A10 play, it's really big for Dayton not only to go out in a draw. Again, we talked about that Fordham draw in a game where it really felt like they had it the entire time. Moving forward, if they want to host the A10 tournament, which again would be definitely a confidence booster for Coach Golsa's squad, they got to win most of their games.
Yeah, absolutely. Before the show, Joe and I, we were talking about the young talent for the Flyers. Maddie Bowman just won A10 Newcomer of the Week or Rookie of the Week, whatever you'd like to call that. And I think that she's been an absolute asset to the team, as well as some of the other freshmen, and then the super, super strong sophomore class that the Flyers feature. And I think that sophomore class has been an asset in not only women's soccer, but other Flyer sports as well.
Absolutely. Well, that is all we have for today. Thank you for joining us here on Flyer Sports. I'm Joe Sullivan.
I'm Sean Vitalis.
And we'll see you next time here on Flyer TV.